everybody. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Joy Reid Show. Big up to everybody that's listening and watching on YouTube, Substack, Spotify, all of the peeps. Thank you all for tuning in. Everybody in the chats, hello. We see you. Thank you all for waiting. We were a teeny bit late tonight, but we're so glad that you're here with us. Specifically, want to big up our team TJRS members. Hello, hello, hello. All right, it is Monday. So that must mean that Donald Trump is distracting from the Epstein files by invading an American city. So next up, Portland. We're going to show a little video of Donald Trump's plans for that poor city.
And when we go there, if we go to Portland, we're going to wipe them out. They're going to be gone, and they're going to be gone fast. They won't even stand the fight. They will not stay there. They've ruined that city. I have people that used to live in Portland. They've left. Most of them have left. But what they've done to that place is it's like living in hell.
Yeah, it looks like hell. Seems like a dangerous place. But as we all know by now, there is nothing that Donald Trump will not do to prevent the American people from seeing and thinking about the Epstein files. And we're getting more and more details indicating that who Trump is protecting specifically are the very same billionaires who are gaining control of this country, all of our social media, all of our media, gaining control of the world, AI beast by AI beast. Let me read you a story from CNBC talking about the Epstein billionaires. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and former Trump White House advisor Steve Bannon are among those who appeared in partially redacted files related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein that were released on Friday by Democrats in the House Oversight Committee. The committee earlier embarked on a probe to evaluate whether the federal government mishandled the case against Epstein and co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell, who is serving a 20-year prison sentence following a 2022 conviction for recruiting teenage girls to be sexually abused by Epstein. President Donald Trump had promised voters on the campaign trail that he would release government documents related to Epstein, who was arrested in the summer of 2019 on sex trafficking charges and died in a New York federal prison, reportedly by suicide before trial. However, Trump has refused to endorse the release of any Epstein files since returning to the White House in January, and Republicans in Congress have followed his lead, keeping the documents out of the public's view. Democrats on the committee on Friday released redacted pages from a new batch of files they obtained through their probe without giving their Republican peers advance notice. They were rebuked for the move. So Trump is now basically pushing and sort of bullying the Republicans who have voted to release the files, and there are only 4 of them. Thomas Massie of Kentucky, Lauren Boebert of Stupid City, Colorado, Nancy Mace of Trollville, South Carolina, and the bleach blonde, bad-built butch body herself, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the QAnon-curious congresswoman from Georgia, who weirdly enough is emerging as like the heroic voice of the Epstein victims for whatever reason. I think it's also because of QAnon. And who this week posted this really, really cryptic, very creepy tweet, essentially saying that she's not suicidal, so that if anything happens to her, her fans should be skeptical of the official story. That's super weird. She says she's a sinner. She's saved through his grace and mercy. She has full faith in God and Jesus, and she's not suicidal, and she's one of the happiest, healthiest people ever. Very, very strange as she's pushing, saying she will personally read the Epstein files on the floor of the House, but hey, just letting you know I'm not suicidal. That's weird. Meanwhile, Mike Johnson is doing the most to try to make sure that you never hear the Epstein files contents. He's refusing to seat Adelita Grijalva, who's the newly elected member of Congress who ran to fill her late father Raul Grijalva's seat in Arizona. And he's not seating her, most likely because she vowed to be the 218th vote to release the files. What the actual hell? And then here's where things get even weirder. Because guess who the prosecutor was? Who belatedly filed those federal charges against Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell in 2019, nearly a decade after former U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta gave Jeffrey Epstein, the billionaire pedophile, a sweetheart work release deal in Florida and then copped a cabinet seat in the first Trump administration. Guess who prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell? Her name is Maurene Comey. She was not only the prosecutor in the Epstein case for that whole month between his indictment and when he supposedly committed suicide in prison while he was under the care of the Department of Justice run by Donald Trump and Bill Barr, whose father hired him to be a teacher in the first place, that guy. She not only prosecuted him and Ghislaine Maxwell and got her 20 years before she herself got a sweetheart deal from the current Trump DOJ after having a secret meeting with Trump's former personal attorney, the attorney from the porn star hush money case, who now works also for the DOJ. Maurene Comey was also the prosecutor of the diddler, Sean P. Diddy Combs, who was convicted in July on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, plus an acquittal on racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking charges. See where I'm going? The diddler. She also prosecuted a Columbia University gynecologist named Robert Hodden for sexually abusing patients, including the wife of former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang, who also got 20 years. Maurene Comey is now suing the DOJ after she was unceremoniously fired from the Southern District of New York via an email with no explanation, which is also weird. But besides her connection to the Epstein case and the fact that she was weirdly fired this summer, at the same time that MAGA was screaming for the Epstein files, you know what's also weird about Maurene Comey? It's who her father is. Her father is James Comey. James Comey, yeah, that guy, James Comey, the former FBI director who Trump recently ordered his personal attorney general, Pam Bondi, to prosecute. Here is the Truth Social post that he thought was a DM, but which Grandpa Fuhrer accidentally made public. It reads, Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old story as last time, all talk, no action, nothing's being done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia, meaning Letitia James? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. Then we almost put a Democrat, supposed U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who was never going to do his job. That's why 2 of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him. And there was a great case. Many lawyers, legal pundits say so. Lindsay Halligan is a really good lawyer and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. President DJT. So then the person who he's claiming he fired literally quit because he was like, there's no case against Comey. So instead, Pamela Joe, who could not find any prosecutors in the DOJ who were willing to indict Comey because he hasn't done anything wrong, he then goes to a woman named Lindsay Halligan. Lindsay Halligan. So who is Lindsay Halligan? Let me play it. I recently was on a great show called Have I Got News for You? And I'm going to let them, I'm going to actually, it's a great show. It's Roy Wood Jr., Michael Ian Black.
What clip is that?
We're gonna play this clip of Lindsay Halligan,
What
and this is from Have I Got News for You, and it's Amber Ruffin explaining it, and it is A10, I believe it is A10. The Have I Got News for You video, which is A10. I want them to see who Lindsay Halligan is, and this is A10. Have I Got News for You, and Amber Ruffin is going to explain who this woman
Pam Bondi had Trump's former personal attorney, Lindsay Halligan, sworn in as an interim U.S. attorney just to prosecute James Comey. What do we know about new interim U.S. attorney, Lindsay Halligan? There she is. Maybe it's Maybelline.
She's in the Trump administration, so in like 3 months, she's going to look busted.
She's never prosecuted anybody. I've done more.
The other piece that people are forgetting is the guy who had that job refused to do it and had to resign because he said there's nothing to prosecute James Comey for. And he's actually an expert.
Well, if she was never a prosecutor, what was her job?
Her most recent job was restoring truth and sanity to American history by addressing the overemphasis on slavery at the Smithsonian Institution.
Oh, shit.
But here's Lindsay explaining her last trip to the museum.
What I saw when I was going through the museums personally was an overemphasis on slavery. And I think there should be more of an overemphasis on how far we've come since slavery.
Oh, yay. So, like, the bad part about slavery was the slaves. And I feel like there's too many slaves in slavery, you know what I mean? Chains, cute. Whips, fun. The slaves,
Joining me now is Jill Wine-Banks, former Watergate prosecutor, brilliant jurist, and my friend. Let's talk a little about Lindsay Halligan. Thank you for being here, Jill. It's always great to see you. Lindsay Halligan is a former Miss Colorado contestant who, interestingly enough, competed in the Miss USA pageants or the Miss Universe sort of ring of pageants when Donald Trump owned the Miss Universe franchise. So she's a former pageant queen. She's the person Trump put in charge of getting the slaver out of museums. And now she's the weirdly enough prosecutor who no other lawyer from the DOJ would even go into court with her to prosecute James Comey. What do you make of all of this?
I make of it that there is no case, exactly as the career prosecutors decided. That included Eric Siebert, who was the interim U.S. attorney until he resigned rather than do something. By the way, I am so happy with your opening that I'm the happiest I've been in days. I just want you to know that. I also make of it that she didn't know where to go to file this case. She did convince a grand jury, so kudos to her for that.
Yeah.
But she lost on one count, and she didn't get a unanimous vote on the other 2 counts. And when she made this case, was doing something that really was improper. But there is no case. If you analyze the words that Comey said, there's absolutely no false statement and no extortion.
I want to play really quickly. This is because the thing about what Donald Trump is doing, I almost don't want to take it seriously enough to even, you know what I'm saying, to like litigate whether James Comey did anything wrong, because it's absolutely silly. But I do want people to actually get a chance to hear what they're claiming is his crime. So Jason, this is A14. This goes back to when in 2022, James Comey, 2020, sorry, this was during COVID, so it was by video. He's testifying in the United States Senate, and Ted Cruz is questioning him, interrogating him about the investigation of Donald Trump playing footsie with the Russians, which he did in the 2016 election. So Jason, this is A14, if you could play it real quick. This is a little bit of that hearing, and this is what they're claiming.
Cruz.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Returning to Mr. Comey. Mr. Comey, you testified earlier today that you have concerns whenever the FBI doesn't operate in a, quote, competent and honest way. In your judgment, was the way that the FBI handled the Russia investigation, the surveillance of the Trump campaign, the Carter Page FISA application, the Michael Flynn investigation, was that handled in a competent and honest way?
First, Senator Cruz, there was no, to my knowledge, surveillance of the Trump campaign. I think the overall investigation of the Russian interference and whether Americans were associated with it was conducted in an honest, competent, independent way. That
okay. So, Mr. Comey, you're saying it's competent and honest. I assume you've read the Horowitz Inspector General report, which found 17 significant errors or omissions in the Carter Page FISA application. So in your view, 17 mistakes lying to the court is competent and honest?
Well, I've read the report. I don't believe he concluded there were lies to the court, but there are significant and important failings in the way in which the Carter Page FISA was prepared and renewed.
All right, let's shift to another topic. On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation? You responded under oath, quote, never. He then asked you, quote, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration? You responded again under oath, no. Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
Okay,
all right, I'm going to make a final point because my time.
Oh, so basically, Jill, this whole supposed crime that they're claiming James Comey committed is that they're saying he lied to Ted Cruz when Ted Cruz asked him if he authorized a leak about the investigation of Trump. That's the supposed crime. Have you ever heard? Is that the sort of normal thing that you would prosecute a former FBI director for?
Nothing about this is normal. The entire Trump administration is not normal. This is so much worse than Watergate. I cannot even begin. But if you carefully parse the words, Ted Cruz was a very inartful questioner. And what Comey did was brilliant. He said, yes, I repeat exactly what I said in May. I did not. When he answered that, he said, I didn't leak and I didn't authorize anyone to leak. Cruz then goes on to completely misstate McCabe's testimony. McCabe never said that he was authorized before he leaked. He admits he leaked, but he does not say that he was authorized to do so by James Comey. So there is no conflict between them. And that's where you really have a failing. And remember, in a grand jury, number one, all they need is probable cause. In a trial, you need beyond reasonable doubt. In a trial, there will be a defense. In a grand jury, the prosecution goes in and says, this is what they did that's wrong. And a grand jury has to accept that. That won't be the case in a trial. Based on what I have seen, Joy, I believe that there will be a dismissal on pretrial motions, including, for example, Donald Trump's statements, he's guilty as hell, and I'm quoting when I say that, because that is prejudicial pretrial publicity. But if it actually went to the prosecution presenting a case, I believe that after the case is presented, there will be a directed verdict by the judge that the defense won't have to put on a defense. But if the defense does put on a defense, the jury is going to acquit because there is just no case here. And it shows how inexperienced the insurance lawyer, former Miss America contestant, is in doing this job and why we need professional prosecutors, career people who advised her. Not only did her predecessor say no, but the people in the office gave her a memo saying, this is why this isn't a case. And she said, I don't care. I'm going to go ahead and do this anyway.
Yeah.
That's why this is wrong. He can do this to James Comey. He can do it to anyone, especially with what's happening with his executive order about Antifa.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay Halligan, Jason, can you put up A8 if you get a chance? Because Lindsay Halligan, I mean, she is a former beauty pageant girl. Like, I'm not downing beauty pageants. There's nothing wrong with beauty pageants, but she's not like an expert in like the law, right? And she's not an expert on museums either. But Donald Trump, this is A8, yeah. And she, she's a pageant girl, but she's also a Trump loyalist and willing to do it. But the other piece of it, if I could ask you about, Jill, is what do you make of the fact that she went into that courtroom by herself? Wouldn't it be normal for other DOJ lawyers to be sitting at that table with her when she was doing that prosecution?
Look at the last 100, the last 1,000, I don't care how many you go back, indictments. They are all signed by multiple people. They are signed by the people who actually presented in the grand jury. They are signed by people who have ethical rules that mean that they will only present if they can not only prove beyond a reasonable doubt to convict, but also to sustain on an appeal. And that didn't happen here, and no one was willing. This happened in the Southern District of New York when Justice Trump wanted the indictment dismissed against Eric Adams, and everyone said, no, we're not doing it, and left. And we're seeing an outpouring of lawyers from the Department of Justice because they are being asked to do unethical things that they won't do. And thank heavens for that. The problem is they will be replaced with people who will do it. During Watergate, we actually had this issue when Archie Cox was fired, and so was the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. We weren't sure if we had been fired, and we thought, should we leave in protest? And Archie Cox said, do not leave. You are the ones who can do the job, and unless you are prevented from doing what is right and moral and that follows the law and the facts, you must stay. I can understand why people in DOJ now fear that they will be forced to do unethical things where they will risk their licenses, risk their morality. And so it's really hard, and I can sympathize with them wanting to leave under these circumstances.
I want to take advantage of the last few minutes I have with you to ask you about another issue, because I want to note for our audience, Donald Trump, they've also sent essentially word to Fani Willis. They made it clear that they're going to try to prosecute her. They've demanded her travel records. They're trying to find a way to prosecute Fani Willis. Okay, check. She indicted Trump in Georgia. They want to indict the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, check. She won a case against Donald Trump for bilking the people of New York. So Donald Trump is just going down the list of the people that he feels wronged him, and he's trying to prosecute them all. But I want to do one quick turn. Speaking of doing things you're not meant to do, let's show a picture of Pete Hegseth. This is actually A16 if we get a chance. A16, Pete Hegseth, the guy with the tats all over him that was the Fox News host, that's now the Secretary of Defense. He has now called all of the senior military people from all over the world to come and fly to DC at a huge expense, having to leave their post overseas for a meeting. And I believe the meeting is tomorrow. And no one is clear what this meeting is about. But some people are saying it's giving 1930s Hitler demanding personal loyalty from the troops. And I know that you also have been in your legal career representing the Defense Department, representing, our military. What do you make of this demand that the military come and show themselves to Pete Hegseth so that he can, quote, give a short speech?
First of all, for a short speech to spend millions of taxpayer dollars to bring people in is an outrage. Not only that, but they are not at their duty posts. If there is a disaster somewhere, they won't be there to do their job. Third, they will all be in one place, which means that a malign force could do something horrible that would endanger our leadership. Fourth, what is he doing? If he's giving them a pep talk, one, I don't believe they need it. And two, he could do it by Zoom. And three, is he just trying to show he a major, that he controls generals? I mean, I know that sounds as petty as he and Donald Trump are, but I have to wonder about it because he's so outranked by them. Not now. Now he has the equivalent of a 4-star rank as the Secretary of Defense. I refuse to say the Secretary of War because that's just ridiculous. So I think this is a very dangerous thing that he is doing. And if I were a military officer, I don't know how I would respond to this. Obviously, you do what you're ordered because that's the case, except you don't follow illegal orders. And I wonder about the people who are involved, for example, in the attacks on the 3 boats that we don't know had any drugs on them, where civilians were killed. That's murder. It's a violation. I've done some research, definitely a violation of international law. How did they feel about carrying out that order? To me, that's an illegal order. You interdict a boat, you search it. If there's drugs, you seize it and the people on it. You do not murder. That's execution. So everything that's wrong. And if I could mention one other thing, which is really bothers me, there is a committee called DACOWITS, the Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Service, which has, since I think the 50s, done some remarkable work to make it better for women in the military. And he has now abolished that group. I was involved in legislation to abolish the WACS, which was the Women's Army Corps. And the reason that I was involved in that, the reason I did that, the reason I supported that is because in the old days, women could only be, as a general, had 2 slots, the head of the Women's Army Corps and the head of the Nursing Corps. Whereas there were hundreds of generals in the regular army. By eliminating WACS, women became part of the regular army, and we now have 4-star generals. By the way, those were brigadiers. Now we have 4-star generals, many of them, not an equal number, but we have a good number now. Women need to be treated properly. They need to be considered, and DACOWITS is important. It must be brought back. I'm really very much upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about erasing women, people of color, from the history and heroism of the United States. Before I let you go, what is your pin? And we have A20, Jason. We have a close up of the pin. There it is. Tell us what we know what it is.
It is Donald Trump in the very famous Nixon victory sign when he resigned. I hope we do see that when he resigns, but I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, he's morphing into Nixon, only way worse.
Yeah,
there's no comparison. Nixon believed in the rule of law. He violated it, but when he really got down to it, he left office in disgrace. He resigned because he believed in the rule of law. Donald Trump does not even believe in the rule of law, and he will never obey it. We must resist. I also have a new pin that's a paperclip because in Norway during the war, resistors wore a paperclip as a secret sign of their resistance. And I'm debating whether I have to wear the resistance pin every single day.
Yeah.
Although with Antifa under attack, maybe that's a sign of, I don't know, being part of Antifa. I am anti-fascist for sure.
I never call it Antifa. I just call it anti-fascism, because you have to say it out so that you make it clear what the other side is. Because if we're the anti-fascists, you know what the other side is. Jill Winebanks, thank you so much. I'm going to get myself a safety pin too and wear it as well. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. Paperclip. All right, send me a paper. We'll wear one together. We're going to have you back on. We'll both be in our clips together. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And so there we go. I want to play you guys one piece of sound before we move on to the next topic. And this is A19 for Mr. Jason Reid. And because the thing about what Donald Trump is doing to the military, and Jill did used to represent military folks. Thank you, ADEM for the $4.99 for the tip. We appreciate you. Thank you very much for throwing a little something in the till.
I have it whenever you.
Let's play this, because military people are said to be completely on the side of Donald Trump. Like, that's the supposition that people make, is that Donald Trump has the military locked down. That is not necessarily true. I want to play for you. Let me see if I can find, so I can make sure that I know who it is that we're reading it for. But let's just play it, and then I'll tell you who it is after on the other side. This is from another YouTube channel. Take a look.
Hegseth has called a meeting of all military senior leaders next week. And there are a couple of reasons why he could be doing this, and I'm going to walk you through some of them, okay? One reason is he could ask all of these leaders for a pledge of loyalty to Donald Trump instead of the Constitution. And if they don't give that pledge, he could have them fired or arrested. And when you hear that and you go like, holy shit, it's all over, they're going to take over the military. In order for me to believe that, which I don't, I would have to believe that every other leader and military person underneath them was going to just roll over if their leaders got arrested or fired. And that's not the case. Because let me be clear about this. Our entire military, especially the officers, especially the leaders from top to bottom, are trained in military history and are trained in the UCMJ, are trained in the Constitution. And the higher up they go, the better off they're trained. And they are trained against enemies foreign and domestic. And if you don't think in the back of their minds that they have thought about this or this coming down the pipe in some way, you would be wrong. The previous time that Trump was, running the country, military leaders were aware of this and they were preparing for this. They understood this was a possibility. During Biden's administration, when Milley gave that speech, "We do not answer to a king," they were preparing for this. When Biden said, "Remember your oath," they were preparing for this. So this is something that's been in the back of a lot of people's minds, a lot of military personnel's minds for multiple years. It was something you hoped would never really happen, but you knew it was there because it does say "and domestic." And so they are prepared for that. And they're also prepared to do what they have to do if that is the case. If military leaders start getting fired and there's a pledge of loyalty, that becomes a domestic enemy. And you can't tell me that the entire military is just going to suddenly roll over in all of these units, right? And some people will say like, oh, look how veterans voted in 2024. Okay, I'll look at how veterans voted. And it was like 67% that voted for Trump. But I'll also look at the fact that 50% of post 9/11 veterans voted for Kamala Harris. I'll also point you to the fact that the VA has been decimated, right? They have had military members rolling out red carpets for Putin. They put on a military parade where the military was not having that. They had flyovers where for like the first time in history, the flyover was delayed because the military was sending a message. They had to pass over 38 4-star generals to find a retired 3-star general to be his chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They fired the leader of the DIA for doing his job and giving the assessment of his agency. They fired him for doing his job. And if you think that sent a bunch of feel-good vibes throughout the military, it did not. They understood that this guy was getting fired for telling the truth, which is what you were trained to do in the military. That did not go over well. Hegseth is a running meme. There are articles about this. He's a running meme inside the military, okay? The support of the military is not there for this administration.
That is Hawks Podcast. Big up to reader Jasmine Clark for forwarding that on. Thank you very much. Really appreciate. And this is, I think that's the word. That's a word for us right now. Thank you to Gail Lewis through $2 in the till. Thank you very much to everybody that's in the chat. We love you guys. Thank you all for the big ups in the chat. Let me pick up one more person in the chat. Nicole Marks, thank you very much for the kind words and the $4.99. We love it. Thank you very much. We've thrown $4.99 more in the till. All right, moving on to our next topic. Over the weekend, we got some news of the New York mayor's race. Eric Adams surprised everybody by dropping out of the race. He's out. We're going to go to B2. If we can get a chance, Jason, we go to B2, which is the video, which is going to show what he said and a little bit of his dropout message, because he actually posted a video on social media in which he explained why he's dropping out. Here's B2.
Meanwhile, New York City Mayor Eric Adams is ending his bid for re-election. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's allies have long pushed Adams to withdraw to give Cuomo a better chance against Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani in November. Adams announcing his decision on social media yesterday with this video.
I cannot continue my re-election campaign. The constant media speculation about my future and the campaign finance board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign.
The move comes after Mamdani, a self-professed Democratic socialist, took a stunning win in June's Democratic primary over Andrew Cuomo.
All right, thank you very much, local news. And you gotta love the way they emphasize Democratic socialist. Mamdani and Sliwa actually reacted to this. This is B3. This is the reaction from Mamdani and Sliwa.
Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa talked about the shakeup and what's ahead in the race.
What I can say is that I don't contest his diagnosis of the problems that the city is facing. He was saying that our next mayor needs to be focused on lowering costs, on improving quality of life, on keeping the city safe. And that is at the heart of this campaign. I think what I contest is the delivery of those things over these last 4 years.
These billionaires have been wrong every step of the way. First, they love Cuomo. Then, on the rebound, they went to Eric Adams. Remember back in June 24th when Cuomo lost? What was everybody saying that I should do at that point? Drop out for Eric Adams. How did that work out?
Does he have hair under there? I cannot, I have to show this to you guys. I cannot, I've never seen Curtis Lee without that hat. I don't know if he's completely bald under his hat. I don't know what's happening, but I have to show you guys this. This is before, I have to show you Curtis Lee with his cat. It just is emblematic of yeah, there he is. Mr. Bigglesworth. With his cat. Does he ever take that hat off? Joining me now, maybe she can answer this question, is my friend Christina Greer, Associate Professor of Political Science at Fordham University, Lincoln Center, Manhattan campus, and co-host of the FAQ NYC Politics podcast. Does he have hair? I just need to know. Does he have any hair under his
I've never
hat?
seen it. I've known him and been on air with him at New York One for many, many years. I've never seen him without that.
And for
if
those,
you remember, Joy, there was
yeah.
a In Living Color sketch that Jim Carrey did making fun of him when he was a guardian angel patrolling the subway in the 90s.
Well, that's what I was going to mention. For those who are not used to New York, who are not from New York, that getup that he wears is the guardian angels. They used to put on that same getup. They all have the red beret and they ride around on the subway, like keeping everybody safe. I'm not sure what they would do if somebody tried to hurt you, but they're there to be the muscle, for the regular riders on the subway back in the 80s when it was a little dangerous, even more dangerous. Sometimes it's dangerous to ride the subway, but they would be the guardians of everyone. And that was his getup in the 80s and 90s, and he's still wearing it. It's like his shtick. It's like the blue bubble coat, the brother from that did Black, that was like a D-Ray that wears the blue bubble coat. That's his uniform. That's
100 degrees.
Don't matter. Blue bubble coat. Talk to me about this race, because the thinking is that Adams dropping out. He only had 10% of the vote, 10, 11%. Who does it help? The thinking is it helps Cuomo.
The thinking is it does help Cuomo, and that's probably true, except for there are going to be some folks, because Zohran Mamdani is running such an amazing ground game and actually going into Black communities and outer borough communities who aren't used to being talked to. There is a possibility for him to actually get some of those votes. The natural inclination is that it goes to Cuomo. A few will go to Sliwa just because of conservative values. And, Eric Adams had a pretty broad coalition. I mean, don't forget, as I wrote, many years ago when he first became mayor, he slid across the ideological spectrum. So for particular issues, there's some people who really did like Eric Adams. I think some voters, the polling showed he was really at like 8.5%, 9% for quite some time. It's strategically, a lot of people want to get a little bit of something as opposed to nothing.
Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo more aligns with an Eric Adams than the other two candidates.
Talk to me about it, because it's a strange thing for those who are not familiar with New York City politics. What you essentially have are three Democrats in the race and Curtis Sliwa, who's running as the Republican. So Curtis Sliwa is like a conservative, like he's the guardian angel guy with the cats. I think he's like 15 cats or something like that. So he's the Republican. Zohran Mamdani is the Democratic candidate who a lot of Democrats refuse to endorse, or they'll like barely endorse him. They're like, okay, he's the Democrat, fine, but they don't like him.
He's the Democratic nominee. Yeah.
So, he's the Democratic nominee. But then you've got Andrew Cuomo, who's running now as an independent because he got beat. And then you've got Eric Adams, who was the supposedly Democratic mayor, but who acted like a right-wing Trump Republican. But he also has a lot of Black support. Did I explain that right?
Yes. Yes. So let's back up just a teeny bit. So Curtis Sliwa is the Republican nominee. The Republican nominee usually gets about a third of the vote. So he's not polling at a third, but in the past, Republican nominees always get that, because we know some Republicans can never vote for a Democrat. And so that's just what it is. Even though Democrats are disproportionately registered in New York, 6-1, right? More Democrats.
Uh-oh. Did the gremlins get Christina? Oh,
Because so many districts of, say, the 51. Uh-oh.
Your Wi-Fi cut out for a minute, so back up back up like 20 seconds and say what you said.
Okay, so lots of people are registered as Democrats, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're Democrats in their hearts, because so many of our city council districts and state legislative districts are so calcified as Democrats, and you don't even have a Republican running. You could be a little more conservative and still registered as a Democrat. That's how we can have 20 years of Republican mayors, 2 terms of Giuliani and 3 of Bloomberg, and people are like, but you guys are Democrats. It's like, are we though? I mean, we're registered as Democrats.
Yeah.
We are many different shades of blue and also purple. Then you have Eric Adams, who realizes he can't win in the Democratic primary, so he doesn't run in it. He creates a party line. He runs as an independent in the general. You have Andrew Cuomo, who ran in a very crowded Democratic primary. We also have this thing called ranked choice voting, where you get up to 5 choices, and sort of we jockey, and whoever gets over 40% and is the winner. We have to keep doing that until you win. Actually, 50%. So Zohran Mamdani not only wins, but he beats Andrew Cuomo handedly. Over 13 percentage points he beats him. So normally you would pack up your bags and go home, Joy. If someone says, I don't want you, you go. Andrew Cuomo couldn't do that. And so he creates an independent party line, and he's the general election.
And let's talk about that independent, because there are other parties. There's like the Working Families Party, which most Democrats, in order to win, have to also get the Working Families Party's endorsement. They're like a progressive, pro-worker, party that's got a lot of like Black support, and it's got a lot of like working class support. So there's them, and they are backing Mamdani, and he's sort of aligned with them. You've got the Democratic Socialists of America. The Democratic Socialists are also backing Mamdani. So he's got this coalition, but he's also starting to eat into the African-American population, the liberal white population, the people who voted for Maya Wiley last time. So there's like different pieces that Mamdani's putting together, because he has a big lead. Like his lead is more, like it's more than 50%, right?
It's substantial. I mean, here's the thing, Joy, because he's running such a solid campaign, he is like a once in a generation politician. We have seen that. And he's not afraid to go to all 5 boroughs and all 5 communities. There was lots of hand wringing and pearl clutching, because he actually won the Democratic primary without a majority support of Black voters, which is not something New Yorkers are accustomed to seeing, because the Black vote in New York has been so substantive. A few things have been happening. Black people are hemorrhaging out of New York City because of the affordability crisis that he talks about and makes his signature case. Also, if I were advising him, which I don't advise New York candidates, I wouldn't go after Black people. Black voters are strategic voters. They were with Andrew Cuomo. They know Andrew Cuomo. They knew Andrew Cuomo's father, who was also a 3-term governor, just like former Andrew Cuomo, who was the governor for almost 3 full terms. Why would they take a chance on a 33-year-old from Albany, who's a legislator in Albany, who has no citywide experience in a primary? It didn't seem as though he was going to win. Now that he did win, and they saw how much he won by, and his message has been clear and consistent, and he goes to every single, he was with Al Sharpton the day after the primary saying, these are the issues. I want to make sure people can still stay in New York. They can't stay in New York because they can't afford New York. They can't get to their jobs on time because transportation isn't what it needs to be, right? It's affordability. It's making the city livable. And the city is already safe, to Eric Adams' credit. So the sad thing is, Eric Adams could have been a legitimate mayor if he had stayed focused, not taken so many people from, the old days to a second location. And he is the one who got in his own way. He can blame as many people as he wants. And we know that there are some racism, and there's always racism with Black electeds, sure. But in Eric Adams' case, Eric Adams was the problem. And he only has himself to blame for a lot of the issues that he had. And Zohran Mamdani is actually capitalizing on the fact that some people think about affordability because they're making $40,000 a year. Some people think about affordability because they're making $400,000 a year, but it's actually still a really tight city to live in. Nowadays, you go to the grocery store, you get barely a bag of groceries for $60.
Yeah.
Lots of folks can feel that. I feel that, and I'm gainfully employed, and I don't have, 4 other mouths to feed. So there's a consistency. And also, when there's chaos at the top of the ticket, meaning in Washington, D.C., one of two things usually happens. Either people just say, I just want the status quo. I don't want to change. I don't want to have any big exogenous shocks. DC's already crazy enough. I just want things to sort of stay at the bare minimum. We've seen actually the second scenario, which is people say, I want to change.
Right.
Actually, if it's so crazy at the top, then fortune favors the bold. Let's actually do something now and take a chance on this kid who's putting together bold ideas, which we haven't seen we've known Cuomo since he was 19 years old. He's also known Donald Trump since then, right? We've seen Eric Adams. He's been elected for many, many decades. And so why not take something new?
And well, the
That's
other
what
piece
it looks like he'll be victorious.
Yeah, but the other piece of it is, let's just do two buckets. Let's start with Andrew Cuomo. I mean, first of all, there was the scandals, right? If he was feeling on folks and stuff, allegedly. Right. And there's so many scandals when he was there. A lot of people were not happy with the way he handled the COVID pandemic when he was governor. So there's a lot of issues that he's got to face now that is also sort of reducing the amount of Black support. He also does not have the endorsement and support of the governor, who's like a fairly, conservative Democrat as Democrats go, but she ain't rolling with him.
Put in office.
Exactly. And so, but then the other piece is AIPAC. Let's talk about that. Because AIPAC, it feels like one of the reasons that Democrats can't consolidate around Mamdani is AIPAC. AIPAC hates the idea of Mamdani because he's not subservient to this foreign country who apparently all American politicians are required to be subservient to, and he's not. So that's one piece.
In New York.
Especially in New York, where you see all of the mainstream big ticket Democrats running from Mamdani or barely supporting him because they are subservient to, for whatever reason, AIPAC, all of them, right? So tell me how that plays in, because it seems to me that somebody said to Eric Adams, get out of this race, we'll get you a job or a seat in the Trump administration. That's the logical conclusion. Now, he'd be difficult to confirm, even though, the Republicans would confirm a bag of poop if Donald Trump ordered them to. He could be confirmed, except he's Black, so it's different, right? He's not like Hegseth dumb. He's, a Black person. Yeah. So,
and keep in mind, Eric Adams is not dumb.
And he's smart, right? Eric Adams is actually a smart person that knows what he's doing. If he was a dumb, mediocre guy like Hegseth, he could probably get in. But that's my two questions for you. How much is AIPAC playing into Adams getting out? Is Adams being bought off to get out of the race? Is he going to get a job? Is he going to get something from the Trump right?
So I'm going to take the second question first.
Yeah.
So, a lot of folks are like, oh, is he going to go in the Trump administration? He's going to be, ambassador to Saudi Arabia, which I think is a terrible idea because they do not like shenanigans and party cat. But don't forget, Joy, this is an incredibly wealthy city. And so we've got the business community. We also have the real estate community, which has never left Eric Adams' side. So I don't even think he needs to go to DC or abroad. He has enough connections and power. He knows how Albany works. He was a legislator. He was a Brooklyn borough president. He was the mayor. We've seen mayors from all over the country trading in sort of their power and their knowledge as consultancies. He will most likely sort of take a seat in some sort of big firm, whether it's real estate or financial, and help them negotiate and think through rough ideas as we buy and sell buildings all throughout New York. That is, and we're constantly having conversations about casinos. There's lots of pushback on casinos because they are horrible for communities. Look at you, Jay-Z. They are terrible for communities, but there are lots of different boroughs that want new casinos to come in. So Eric Adams does have a role to play in local New York City politics. I don't actually think he needs to go very far for him to have a pretty long career, and he can also advise other cities domestically and internationally. So I think that's where he's going to be. As far as AIPAC, I think that's why we've seen a lot of New York politicians be mealy-mouthed for a long time, because I think in their hearts politically they might want to say, like, listen, the train has left the station. Okay, it is on the tracks. It's moving, and it's moving without Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, and Hakeem Jeffries. Kathy Hochul came around 2 weeks ago. The two African-American heads of the state legislature and the state Senate came around. But I think it's possibly the donor class that is actually making sure that certain leaders do not support Zohran Mamdani. If you remember, for those of your viewers who were New Yorkers, during the big debate, I think it was the second debate, during the Democratic primary, the question was asked, if you become mayor, where are you going to go? Where's your first choice?
Yeah.
I'm going to Disney World. Everyone said, I'm going to Israel.
Israel.
Zohran Mamdani said, I'm the mayor of New York. I'm going to stay in New York. And then it said, well, why wouldn't you go to Israel? Because I'm the mayor of New York. And then, well, do you not like Israel? Do you not support Israel? So there are lots of these assumptions where, he has been very skilled at saying, just because I have very strong feelings about certain international relations, that does not make me an anti-Semite. He deals with enough Islamophobia and threats of his own to understand. He's talked to rabbis and Jewish leaders across New York to sort of say, I'm having an honest conversation about how we can disagree about international politics, but that does not mean I'm denigrating an entire race, group, religious, ethnicity, however it is amorphously defined, because that's very individual and somewhat complicated when it comes to New York. But there is a money piece behind all electeds and a lobbying piece behind all electeds, especially when we're talking about the New York City mayor's race, which is arguably the second most important job in the country. And so in New York, I always argue that there's when you go on safari, you got to see the big five, right? So you're always looking out for the big five animals. In New York, I argue that the big four are real estate, business, labor, and the Hasidic community. Thus far, Zohran Mamdani only has the backing of labor, and not even all of labor. But what he does have is the people power. He walked from the top of Manhattan all the way down to the bottom, and every single different type of community. New York is nothing but small neighborhoods. I know we're 9 million people almost, but we are nothing but little enclaves, little mayors here and there, little folks that, sort of have their bodegas or have their blocks. And he is not afraid to talk to each and every one of them and sit there and answer their questions. There's the difference. So this is the first time that the moneyed class and the powerful class, and there's the Venn diagram of the two, this will be the second race in a row where they didn't hand cherry pick the mayor. They didn't choose Eric Adams. They didn't know him. They didn't know people who knew him. They didn't choose Mamdani. They don't know him. They don't know people who know him. So this is also a tectonic shift in New York where we're now going to possibly see, and don't forget, November 4th is still a ways away, and there's a lot that can happen, right? 3 weeks ago, we had 5 candidates. Now we have 3.
Right.
So there's some tectonic shifts. But if he is victorious and he's sworn in on January 1st, which is just so beautiful how we do this in New York. It's a new year. It's a new day. We get a new mayor. The business class and the moneyed class will have round 2 of not selecting who they want and not having control over who they want. And there's a real opportunity, I think, for a lot of New Yorkers who saw a real opportunity with Eric Adams because he went to the outer boroughs. When Maya Wiley, who I have a deep love and admiration and respect for, and Catherine Garcia and all the other Democratic candidates went to the same 6 neighborhoods and were pounding their message because these are highly participatory neighborhoods. Eric Adams didn't visit those once. He went to all the outer boroughs. And these are the first, for many people, the first time a mayoral candidate and then a mayor ever spoke to them. Zohran Mamdani is actually doing both. He's going to the popular 6 neighborhoods where all the voters are. He's also going to the outer boroughs the way Eric Adams did. And that is a shift that the sort of powerful class in New York is wrapping their head around. And he's also very young. He also doesn't have a lot of citywide experience. So we will see people from the de Blasio administration, from the Bloomberg administration, coming into the fore to assist him. And I think the biggest problem he's going to have are with his diehard DSA supporters who want him to be the candidate that they imagine the very first day. But we all know that compromise is the essence of democracy, and he's going to have to do a lot of it as mayor of New York City.
It is going to be very interesting. Christina Greer, my friend, thank you very, very, very much. We appreciate you. Always here to break down the NYC of it all. Christina Greer, my friend, thank you very much. We'll be watching.
Anytime, Joy.
Thank you very much. Well, you heard it here. Christina Greer laying it out for you. It's going to be an interesting race. An uncontrolled mayor, a mayor who is not under the control of AIPAC, not under the control of the billionaire class in New York City, not under the control of Wall Street. Guy from Queens by way of Uganda. His mom, by the way, is the woman, Mira Nair, who made the movie Mississippi Masala. I think we mentioned that on the show before. So his mom is a filmmaker. His father is a professor. His middle name is Kwame, which cannot hurt in increasing his share of the black vote. All right, before we head up to the top of the hour, we are zooming in on the top of the hour, hour 2. How are you guys liking this new 2-hour format of the Joy Reid Show? We're experimenting because, you know, we're new. We're like 3 months old. We're a toddler. And so we get to play around. I want to say a couple of things that I didn't get to at the top.
I think we turned 4.
Do we turn 4? Are we about to be 4?
Yeah, maybe 5 months.
We're 4 years old.
June,
We're 4 years old. But I want to say this because I didn't get to at the top, and I really think you guys got to understand this. Throughout the last decade or so, right, Jason, of our lives, the FBI directors that we can remember have been Chris Wray, Robert Mueller, and James Comey. And they are actually connected in a lot of interesting ways. Did you guys know that? I don't know if you guys know this. But I need to really quickly, before we get to the top of the hour.
There were a few others before.
There have been a few others, but they're the 3 most memorable FBI directors that we know. Robert Mueller is the guy who was the Attorney General of the United States right after 9/11. So he is the guy who comes in after 9/11. And so he's the one who was attempting to deal with the fact that the U.S. was not prepared for 9/11. So that's who he is. There was this incident that I don't know if you guys remember when Comey, when Robert Mueller, who's the guy who did the Mueller report, he's the one who found, who did the report on Donald Trump playing footsie with the Russians. Y'all remember that? But the other thing that you have to remember about Robert Mueller is there was a time when he and other members of the DOJ threatened to resign, as did James Comey, who at the time was an acting deputy attorney general, because the Bush administration was attempting to warrantlessly wiretap Americans. Remember this? They had this thing called, I think it was Operation Tailwind or something, where they were going to wiretap Americans' phones, but also we later found out internet. And Mueller and Comey attempted to resign after Comey races to the bedside of John Ashcroft, who was the attorney general at the time, because the DOJ had ruled the warrantless wiretapping to be illegal. And so because Ashcroft was getting like his spleen out or something, and he's like under meds, the person who was the acting attorney general was like, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off on this wiretapping. Comey was like, oh no, you're not, and races to the hospital bed to say, yo, John Ashcroft, don't let this happen. Remember this?
Was it Alfonso Gonzalez? No,
it was Alberto Gonzalez.
Alberto
Gonzalez was going to allow the Bush 1, the Bush 2, W administration to warrantlessly wiretap us. And Comey and Mueller teamed up to say no. We have a picture. Let me see if I can find it, of Comey and Mueller and Obama all together.
Which one is that?
And let me try to find it because let me see if I can find it. I gotta find it. But Obama turns around and he nominates Comey to succeed. It's A11. He nominates Comey to succeed Mueller. There they are together. You see them together? Isn't the world interesting? And so the guy on the left of your screen, that's Comey, whose daughter winds up prosecuting not only Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, but also the diddler. And on the right of your screen is Mueller, who writes the Mueller report about Donald Trump playing footsie with the Russians. And now Trump is trying to indict Comey, fired his daughter, and he can't really get Mueller because Mueller's been retired. But it's just interesting. I thought that was very interesting. All right, we're into hour 2 of the Joy Reid Show. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Joy Reid Show. We want to thank everybody that's in the chat. Folk in the chat are remembering the whole Comey, Mueller, Ashcroft contretemps during the Obama administration. All of this stuff ends up overlapping. The things that happened during the Obama administration are the things that Donald Trump is still litigating in his mind, because his diseased mind cannot get past the fact that he got caught doing things that were criminal, trying to become president, getting help from the Russians. which he did, begging the Russians to hack Hillary Clinton's emails. And Comey's been in the middle of all of this stuff. He's been the good guy and the bad guy. He was Comey the homie when he rushed to Ashcroft's bedside in order to stop the acting AG, Alberto Gonzales, from allowing them to the government to wiretap us. Then he was the bad guy when 11 days before the 2016 election, he pops out on camera and says, hey, we're investigating Hillary Clinton's emails. We think we found some more emails. Then 3 days before the election, he comes out and says, never mind, we didn't find anything in the emails. So then he's the bad guy. Then he's the good guy again when he oversees the investigation of Donald Trump messing with the Russians. And now Trump wants to prosecute him. He's been both. And when he became Trump's FBI director, before Trump got rid of him and put in Christopher Wray, he tells a story about walking into the Oval Office, and he's really tall, Comey. And he says, as tall and big as he was trying to hide in the drapes because he got the sense that Trump wanted him to pledge a personal oath of loyalty to him, and he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. That is who is president of the United States. Someone who two former FBI directors have caught being corrupt when it comes to Russia, who is now trying to prosecute all of the prosecutors who prosecuted him because he was caught by Fani Willis trying to steal the election in Georgia. He said, please, can you give me 11,000 votes? Come find me 11,000 votes. That's what he said to that state secretary of state who wouldn't do it. And now he wants to prosecute Fani Willis. They've asked her for information about her travel. He got caught stealing from the people of New York by the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. Now he wants to prosecute her, claiming she committed mortgage fraud, which she didn't. Now he wants to prosecute James Comey because James Comey busted him getting help from the Russians. And he fires Comey's daughter, who prosecuted Epstein when Donald Trump is doing everything in his power to not release the Epstein files. And that lady is who prosecuted Epstein and the diddler. When you start to think about it that way, it's actually pretty creepy because you think about it. This is the other big story that's been happening in the U.S. And so let's go into the violence that we've seen happening all over the country that Donald Trump would love to try to tell you is coming from the left. But I want to play for you. This is C1, Mr. Jason Reid. This is Chris Wray, who I told you, these are the three FBI directors that in my sort of last decade or two that I can recall, Mueller, Comey, and Chris Wray. So when Trump finally gets rid of Comey, he brings in this guy, Christopher Wray, who then becomes the FBI director. He carries over into the Biden administration. So this is after Donald Trump loses the election in 2020. Chris Wray stays on as FBI director, and he goes and he testifies in March of 2021. He does this testimony. And by the way, I just want to note for you that Chris Wray is a lifelong Republican. From everything we know about his biography. Here is his testimony. And I played some different sound last week, but this is the sound I actually wanted to play. This is him testifying when he's asked the question by a member of the United States Senate, who is responsible for the majority of violence in America? And here's what he said. This is C1.
According to the FBI, domestic terrorists killed 39 people in fiscal year 2019, making it the most deadly year for domestic terrorism since the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing. My question to you, Mr. Wray, is how would you characterize the domestic terrorist threat posed by white supremacists?
So first I would say that domestic terrorism generally, in particular self-radicalized, typically lone actors here, represents a serious, persistent threat. I think we had about 107 domestic terrorism arrests in fiscal year 19, which is close to the same number that we had on the international terrorism front. Within the domestic terrorism group, and we have at any given time, the number fluctuates, but at any given time, we have about 1,000, sometimes it's closer to 900, sometimes it's above 1,000 domestic terrorism investigations. A huge chunk of those domestic terrorism investigations involve racially motivated, violent, extremist motivated terrorist attacks. And the majority of those, of the racially motivated, violent, extremist attacks, are fueled by some kind of white supremacy. And I would say that the most lethal activity over the last few years has been committed by those type of attackers.
And there you have it. Racially motivated violent extremists, RMVE. That used to be a designation within the FBI. And they've been working on trying to figure out why racially motivated violent extremism is so prevalent in the United States for nearly 20 years. Know that this is something the FBI has been tracking for a really long time, going all the way back, more than 20 years, back to the Oklahoma City bombings, because they have this cadre of right-wing, white, male, armed extremists who normally are lone actors, but sometimes act in groups, as the Oklahoma City bomber did, which he had a partner. And they are the biggest source of violence in the United States, period. The FBI used to post that information online because I used to download it when I was at Ms. Now, but you can't even get it anymore because they deleted it. So now I want to bring you to, let me answer Kev7 24/7's question. Why are all FBI directors usually Republicans? Because law enforcement, whether it's federal or state, tends to pull from conservative people. And also, most FBI directors are white men. And just statistically, most white Americans are Republicans. Just like statistically, most Black Americans are Democrats. So if you throw a rock at 10 white people, 6 of those people will be Republicans. If you throw a rock at 10 Black people, 8 of those people will be Democrats. It's just, we have racially polarized voting in America. So the fact that every FBI director has been a white man means that statistically they're mostly Republicans, and Republicans tend to be conservative. So that's just the data. That's just the way it is. But I want to now bring you to something called the Mass Shooting Tracker. This is a site that spends their time tracking mass shootings. We have an epidemic in this country of mass shootings. So just in this year of 2025, we've had 381 mass shootings. There's been one day since the last mass shooting. So let's go to what those last mass shootings are. They actually break down. The next slide there is going to break down what they are. We just had 5 more mass shootings. We had the one in Eagle Pass, Texas. That shooter was actually Black. The other 4 are white shooters. So statistically, it's bearing out. Well, gunman unknown in New Orleans. We actually don't know about that one. But the last 3 in Grand Blanc, Michigan, in Southport, North Carolina, and in Raleigh, North Carolina. But let's go to, I want to start with the one that happened in Michigan. I believe we have a little piece of video that we want to show you about the really horrific shooting of a Mormon church in Grand Blanc, Michigan, which is not that far from Flint, Michigan. Jason, do we have that? This is...
Authorities have identified the suspect in the devastating attack on a Michigan church as Trump-loving veteran 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford. Sanford is accused of killing at least 4 people and injuring 8 others during a violent rampage on Sunday. According to investigators, he allegedly drove his vehicle through the front entrance of the church, opened fire with an assault rifle, and then used a flammable substance, believed to be gasoline, to set the building on fire. 7 victims remain hospitalized in stable condition, while at least 1 individual is reported to be in critical condition.
We do believe that we will find additional victims once we have that scene secure.
Sanford, who served in the U.S. military from June 2004 to June 2008, had frequently expressed support for President Donald Trump and shared conservative political views on social media. In one image, Sanford poses alongside his wife and son, wearing a pro-Trump shirt with the message, "Make liberals cry again."
So that makes our total victim count up to 4 victims. As I said before, there has already been the suspect who is deceased as well. So we have 5 deceased persons from this tragic incident. No, we have not cleared the entire church just yet.
Following the incident, President Trump released a statement on Truth Social saying, "This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately." Authorities are continuing to investigate the motive behind the attack.
A very muted statement from Donald Trump when this person and his family are all over social media. They haven't taken down even their Facebook to show that they are extremely right-wing. Let me show you both the Michigan and the North Carolina shooters. This is C4. And this is, just so you can see, these are the 2 most recent mass shootings that we've had. We've had 5 mass shootings in 24 hours. Here's 2 of them. You can just let me know what you think they might have in common. They're both extremely right-wing people, extremely right-wing. And in the case of the Michigan shooter, His family are also right wing, and their Facebook is filled with right wing chatter and right wing sort of attacks on liberals. Let's go to C7. The North Carolina shooter was also a conspiracy theorist. This is a guy in Southport who literally rode up in a boat and started shooting up the port where people were eating at restaurants and enjoying themselves, attacks the restaurant, kills multiple people. He had a conspiracy theory against LGBTQ people, saying they were out to get him. He believed that LGBTQ people were out to get him. So I'm thinking he was right. Also another right-wing shooter. But Donald Trump has decided that who he needs to have his government target is Antifa, something that isn't real. There's no such thing. Here's some breaking news for you. There's no such thing as Antifa. Antifa just means anti-fascist. Anti-fascist demonstrators tend to show up wherever neo-Nazis show up. So when the Charlottesville march happened, when the Tiki Torch march happened, and then the next day it emerged into a riot in which Heather Heyer, a white Black Lives Matter supporter, was killed. They started physically fighting people who showed up to try to oppose them. They were literally a bunch of neo-Nazis who showed up, a bunch of far right wingers who showed up, and this thing turned into a riot. And one of the neo-Nazis drove his car into Heather Heyer, because one of the sort of things on the far right that they love to do is drive their cars into people. It's one of their things. And when the anti-fascists show up, and typically the anti-fascists will show up wearing all black, and they will fight the neo-Nazis. Donald Trump's administration, I want you to really take this in, have said that the anti-fascists who show up and physically fight neo-Nazis are the real domestic terrorists, not the neo-Nazis. And they have to say that because Donald Trump pardoned 1,600 far-right Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, who are all far-right-wing extremists. He said they're fine. They're patriots. They love this country. He said of the Tiki Torch marchers, some of them were bad people, but some of them were very fine people on both sides. But they were neo-Nazis. By the way, Nick Fuentes, who a lot of black YouTubers are standing on a daily basis and acting like he's their savior, even though he really hates black people and says he's racist. He himself says he's racist. He was at that rally, the Tiki Torch rally. He was at that. I think he was at the one the next day, and he ended up dropping out of college because he got so much flack for being part of that movement, which is a neo-Nazi movement. But Donald Trump's administration says the real threat in America are anti-fascists. So if anyone ever says to you, Antifa, spell it out for them. Anti-fascists. Because if you are against anti-fascists, you are a, fill in the blanks, you're a fascist. Because you're either a fascist or you're anti-fascist. You're either a fascist or you're anti-fascist. And the way that you truncate the word anti-fascist is they say Antifa. But even if you say, okay, not all anti-fascists are Antifa. The only Antifa people who ever show up and do anything violent are the young, mainly men, who put on all black and physically fight neo-Nazis. And the Trump regime has said that those people are domestic terrorists. I'm just going to let you figure out what that means, because it sounds to me like what the Trump regime is saying is that, yeah, we're fascists. So let's go on to our next story here. Because we're going to welcome a guest in a moment who's going to talk a little bit about this. There is a thing that we called a gulag. You can call it a concentration camp. I call it a concentration camp in Florida. Its nickname was Alligator Alcatraz. That is what the Republican regime in Florida decided to call this concentration camp. And they put hundreds and hundreds of mainly men who had not had any trials or adjudication into this facility. A federal judge said they needed to close the facility, not because detaining those men was illegal, but because it was an environmental hazard, because the actual physical location was in the Everglades, and it was actually destroying the Everglades to build a jail there. When the judge ordered it closed, the judge required every single detainee inside of, quote, Alligator Alcatraz. And by the way, the really repugnant governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, one of the worst governors in America and one of the most fascist governments in America, they were selling T-shirts that said Alligator Alcatraz. They thought it was funny. And it was sort of a joke in a way, I think, on the fact that in Florida, slave owners used to feed Black children, enslaved Black kids, used to use them as gator bait. And so they revived this old tradition of now using Latinos as gator bait. Most of those people were moved out of that facility because it closed, but no one knows where these people are. Hundreds and hundreds of those prisoners have disappeared. The ICE database that is supposed to track where they are cannot tell anyone where these people are. We didn't even have full information on who all of these people were. We just know that the conditions inside of this place called Alligator Alcatraz were horrific. People were not getting proper food. People were standing up for hours and hours at a time with no place to lie down. It was ice cold or too hot. It was horrific. Human rights violations. I mean, we're doing Israel in the United States like they're doing to the Palestinians, except not killing them, we don't think. We don't know. But people were either being deported to foreign countries. We just don't know what was happening. A lot of those people are now missing. So I'm going to put a pin in that. Another story, an ICE facility in the state of Texas was targeted by yet another gunman who shot up the facility and injured and killed one detainee and injured two others. And so now we're seeing these facilities being targeted by gunmen and extremists, and it was detainees who wound up dying in that situation. To talk about all of these things, I'm really excited to be joined by my friend who I've not seen in person in a long time. So we got to catch up. Adrian Carrasquillo, national journalist who is really one of the best in doing immigration-related reporting. He was one of my favorite guests back on my AM Joy days, like back in the day. So we go back quite a way. He's the author of Huddled Masses, the national immigration newsletter from the Bulwark. Adrian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Joy.
If I was your auntie, I'd say, Adrian! What's going on?
Little trauma, little flashbacks.
I'm giving you, I'm sharing my trauma with you, my friend. I'm sharing my trauma. Let's talk first about, I want to start with Alligator Alcatraz. Yeah. Because, and I hate calling it that, the Florida concentration camp. Mm-hmm. What do you know, if anything, about what happened to the men? I think it was all men that were housed there.
I think that's, something that we've been wondering about. There were so many activists, and there's some excellent Florida immigration activists who would talk to me about Cubans in South Florida, Venezuelans in South Florida who, maybe supported Trump or were just sort of part of that, the reddening of Florida and that those Latino communities that were holding, press conferences and asking where their family members were, and people those, not just Alligator Alcatraz, there's another one down in Florida that are just really bad centers that have had human rights abuses.
You mean Chrome Detention Center,
exactly,
which is
exactly,
notorious.
Notorious, and people that and literally one guy who works for Florida, Immigration Coalition down there told me that Alligator Alcatraz was so bad that their family members were excited when they were going to Chrome. They were like happy, and these are centers that have been, and we know this sort of race to the bottom of inhumanity of DeSantis wanting to follow the Trump administration. Everyone wants to seem tough on immigrants. So, I think that's something that we're wondering, and I haven't looked into it as much. I want to do it in one of my future newsletters, but just like it's we're seeing it from state to state, this inhumanity when it comes to immigrants and just like how bad we can treat them.
The other thing I think we're seeing, and I think Jason pointed out that I don't want to make sure that I'm very clear that they were not threatening to feed the people who are in Alligator Alcatraz to the alligators, but they were sort of making a joke about it. And there were people joking about it. And it was enslaved young Black children that used to be fed to alligators in the exact same state of Florida. So just want to make sure we clarify that. But I want to talk about the violence that ICE is. I mean, it's really becoming at this point, it's like daily, and we're trying not to get numb to it. And Jason, this is D3. I just want to play this because this is something that happened during an ICE raid that has actually become fairly typical of the way ICE operates. And here it is. This is
a 79-year-old business owner says he was body slammed
and pinned to the ground by federal agents during an immigration raid despite being a U.S. citizen. We're hearing more from him tonight as he files a $50 million lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security. Fox 11's Laura Diaz now with the details. Laura?
Surveillance video shows agents first approaching the elderly man inside of his business 2 weeks ago. He says he attempted to ask them what they needed and pleaded with them to allow his workers to retrieve their papers proving they had a right to work in the U.S. Instead, he was thrown to the ground.
So you were pushed 2 times, one in the hallway, one in the hallway and one outside.
Undeterred, he followed the agents outside, where he says the encounter escalated, even though he was respectful. Rafi was now terrified, outnumbered, and outmuscled.
What can I do for you? That one of the guys came, grab me here, and 2 guys attacked me from the back, and they throw me on the ground.
At a news conference Thursday called by Shoehead's attorney announcing a $50 million civil rights claim, Rafi said that he suffered multiple broken ribs, damage to his brain from being slammed headfirst into the ground. He showed his bruises to reporters. Despite his protests that he's an American citizen, he says he was arrested, detained at a federal center for hours upon hours without medical attention.
Adrian, this is becoming the reality for basically anyone brown and black who unfortunately gets rolled up on by these mainly mask-wearing ICE Gestapo thugs. Sorry. What in the hell?
Yeah, I actually had, not to sound like Trump, but I actually had a friend, a reporter, really well-respected reporter, who called me basically crying, being like, are we doing enough? Are we doing enough on the racial profiling? Are we doing enough on the U.S. citizens getting slammed into walls? And, you know, these are the questions we have to ask ourselves. When you see something like that, it reminds me that in his first term, the first newsletter that I did for the Bulwark this year was about that actually in Trump's first term, they rolled up on a bunch of immigrants in a like meatpacking place. And one guy put his boot on someone's neck for 20 seconds and they got sued and they lost a class action lawsuit. And it sounds insane, but it's true. The moment we're in, there need to be lawsuits. There need to be U.S. citizens, people who have rights, who are then have their rights violated in horrible ways, have to stand up and have to sue and have to fight back because they are able to do that. And that can at least maybe slow some of what we're seeing with this muscling up of ICE with $45 billion. All the stuff that's happening is only going to be happening more. And it's really scary stuff.
But I mean, the thing is, I want to go through some of these Wall Street Journal numbers because it isn't resulting in necessarily more detentions. Yeah. It's just worse detentions. I'm going to go through these very quickly. This is the Wall Street Journal. They pulled a bunch of data. This is the first piece. Most of the people who are being deported are men under the age of 40, between 20 and 39. And this is the prime demographic for workers who are in construction, farming, factories, and other labor-intensive occupations. So they're taking away people in construction, farming, factories, and other labor-intensive occupations. Let's go to the next one. Where they're sending people. They're sending people to Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Dominican Republic, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, and mainly Mexico. That's where they're mainly sending people to. And then they have a handful that they're sending to even wilder places, like places on the African continent where these people have never been. But then let's go to this next one, where you're seeing the number of people in detention is spiking. So during Biden, it actually was pretty low in terms of the number of people in detention. It then starts to creep up. But you have to remember, this is the close of the pandemic. But look at the other side of this graph, people who are watching this online. Donald Trump, in terms of ICE deportation, did a lot of deportation. This is when he was taking babies from their screaming babies from their moms, etc. Biden reduces that. Then he starts doing more detentions. Now you can look at what Trump is doing. It's spiking again, where he's taking in more and more people, but it's about what he was doing in his first term. And then I'm going to do one more. Arrests that surged at the beginning of the year, where you're seeing when Biden's term ends, you first start seeing detentions and arrests go down a little bit. And then as Donald Trump, and what I want to notice here is that as we're getting closer to the summer and the Epstein files, the more the Epstein, you could do like a Venn diagram that would track when the Epstein files summer sort of begins, you start seeing a spike again. And then the last thing is the monthly ICE deportations, which you can see here, which is it goes up and down, but it's increasing. This is Donald Trump doing the thing he promised to do, right? Like he said he was going to get rid of people, and he's doing it. And the last one I'll show you is deportations. There it is. This is the one, Jason, I want, is deportations through July of each year. You can actually see that, it's fairly low during Trump's first time. And it's very high actually during COVID, and now it's low again. What do you think Donald Trump is doing? Do you think this is mainly performative, or does it seem to be substantive?
I think there's two parts here. We all know the cruelty is the point. I think there's also a little preview of my next newsletter is I'm getting into the depravity is also the point. And like the way that from the top down, this administration is okay with, beating down the father of 3 U.S. Marines. And so what we're seeing is the interior enforcement. And I think just like going after people that have been here 20, 25 years, like you laid it out really nicely. These men, sort of under 40, these men who work in these, do our labor for us, this cheap labor that benefits this country. And a lot of those stats, we're through July, we're through the summer. We know then they started doing their you're gonna bring the military to blue cities, and if you dare fight back because these are your neighbors and your friends, then we're gonna say that the blue cities are out of control. So this is working for them in that regard. And the only thing I would add is that as we see the funds of the big beautiful bill become available, we're gonna see, as you saw, like the rise in detention, they're gonna be able to do more detentions. And the reason that that's scary, as Congresswoman Jayapal has been talking about on X and on social media, and I interviewed her for my newsletter, is like the deaths are increasing. And there were already 17 this year. That she said there were 12 last year, but she said in recent years, as detentions rose, in recent years there were 3 or 4. So now, as we see more detention with more inhumane ways of treating people, that's the scary thing to me too. And like, how much are we losing our humanity as we just allow people to be grabbed up? U.S. citizens, racial profiling, people to be beaten down by these agents that are sort of like, we're getting to, I wrote a newsletter like the worst ICE agents are coming. I mean, who is drawn to this work at this point?
Well, that is my other question, right? If they're offering $50,000 signing bonuses, which I'm not even sure they're actually delivering on, but it seems to me like the most natural recruits would be Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, Boogaloo Boys, people who want to beat up brown and black people.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw a tweet the other day saying that like Republicans get upset when Democrats want to give a $50,000 signing bonus to a teacher or to an educator, or who want to help them with their student loans. And so we get the society that what we value, and what we value is apparently just having all this enforcement. I guess in a lot of my newsletters I try to have some sliver of positivity because this is all such brutal, terrible stuff. I do feel like we saw this in these focus groups that we did recently at the Bulwark, that when it confronts you and when it hits you, you were like, oh, I kind of thought the border was out of control under Biden and the migrant thing. So like, I kind of was for it. But now my kid's school is sending us letters saying that we're not going to allow ICE into the school. And my kids' friends' parents are being taken. And so now it's affecting us. So people are now being affected in that way as well. And so, it's when it hits. And
I will note that in Iowa, I don't have a graphic for it, but the Iowa school superintendent that was just recently arrested, who's running a school district of 30,000 students, who's a former Olympic track star, who's been in the country. His parents are from Guyana. They are now deporting him. They've arrested him. And the mainly white school district that he administers is horrified. And people are protesting because they're like, wait, this guy is helping our school. And they're like, no, you got to get him out of here. And they're making it sound like he is a danger. Is this, to the focus groups that you guys are doing at the Bulwark, is this starting to change the attitudes and the voting preferences of Latinos? Because we did see Latino men go majority for Trump. There was a lot of support, even Puerto Ricans, even after that comedian Tony Hinchcliffe mocked Puerto Rico and said it's an island of garbage. Trump still did well with Puerto Rican voters. He did well with Latino voters. Is he still beloved by Latinos who supported, in general, the idea of mass deportation?
Yeah, I like these recent focus groups because I keep seeing a bit of a trend, and it followed a Somos Votantes poll, which talked about that Latino men supporting Trump is down 5 points, but that young people is down 10 points. And I mean, like, ultimately, right, that's how this is going to work. I mean, a Democrat's going to have to get some of these former voters. And also, I've noticed things that have pissed them off throughout the year as we've done more and more focus groups. And these were, look, Latino Trump supporters, right? If you supported him in November and we're doing a focus group in March, they were still saying stuff like immigrants take our jobs, and it was like a Latina in Texas. But then she was like, but he's got to stop this Guantanamo Bay stuff. He sounds like a Nazi when he does that. And then El Salvador happened, and they didn't like El Salvador. They didn't like the Kilmar Abrego Garcia thing. This was actually sort of infuriating me. The Democrats were scared to talk about Kilmar. People realized what that was. It was a completely taking away of due process. And people in the focus group were like, hey, it's not okay to make a mistake and ruin a guy's life. So people have some sense that emerges in these crazy situations. And so we've seen certain moments that have caught people's eye, the El Salvador stuff and those guys getting out of there. And this pressure matters. And I don't think the administration wants people to know that pressure matters. We saw this happen in New York in like a really white town where they tried to take out of a barn. They tried to take like a mother and her kids, and people fought back and they released them. They sent them to Texas. That's another thing this administration loves to do, send you far. So your family, no access to counsel. And so this stuff matters. And what I always say with these focus groups is, look, the economy is still number one. And they say, I voted for him to fix this stuff. He's not fixing it. And on top of that, I work in construction. He's taking away construction dudes. Or the immigration thing is this powerful second issue in addition to the economy.
Right. And I think that's the thing that Democrats get wrong, right? I think Democrats assume that every Latino voter's top issue is immigration, which is, very a bit racist to just assume that all people who are brown care about is immigration. It's like, no, they actually care about other stuff, right? So that's number one. And then the second piece is assuming that everyone who cares about immigration is for immigration, because there's always the old immigrants hate the new immigrants. That's in every racial and ethnic group, right? They're like the new people, keep them out, right? They don't want the competition from the new people, or they think the new people are like lowbrow. There's always that kind of competition. So what would you say, I don't know if your focus groups address this, what messages actually do resonate with Latino voters who may be concerned that they think the border might have been too loose under Biden, but they don't want this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them talked about how inhumane it is. And basically, and look, and I know that you've talked about this, but it's like, it can be so frustrating for people who are so into this. It's like, what did you think he was going to do? He literally said he was going to do this. But they'll just say, under Biden, the border was loose. We wanted things tightened, but this is not the way to go about it. He just wants to, insert your sort of adjective, like he's an authoritarian and it's going too far and he's just punishing people and he's getting good workers. A lot of people do say that. Workers, taxpayers, churchgoers, neighbors. And so that's what interior enforcement is. That's what people voted for, right? You voted for Trump. And so, but now people are being confronted with that. We were in Chicago and somebody was telling me, a assemblyman, like his chief of staff in this really Latino area, like 80% Latino area. They were saying that at the beginning, there was a little bit of the older immigrants being like, I don't really care about these Venezuelans, or, this is too much. And now they're seeing more of people being on the same side because they're seeing that the Republicans and Stephen Miller, they don't see a difference between you, right? They're kind of treating you all the same. They if you're Puerto Rican, they don't care you're a U.S. citizen. So
they don't care.
They
see your color. I mean, and that's my question has always been, at what point do brown Americans catch on to what Black Americans were trying to tell them? Baby, they don't care if you're an American citizen. They don't care if you have 3 generations in Cleveland, Ohio. You're a brown and they want you gone. Like, are Latinos getting that message?
Look, I think it's going to be, I guess, look, I actually do think, I was talking about this recently on a panel, like, I actually do think that 2026, the Republicans have a rude awakening coming, and it's on stuff on the economy. There was just something I just saw on X about how Trump is now below Biden on cost of living stuff. So I think that like they're doing all this crazy stuff, and they're trying to hide the ball. We know what's happening. And so I do think that they're going to be into some trouble, and then we'll see after that, after 2026.
Let folks know where they can support your work, or anything that I missed that you want to try to highlight, because promote, Adrian. Tell us what you're working on.
I appreciate it. Look, if you go to the Bulwark, we've got all our newsletters, and Huddled Masses is mine. And I wanted to call it Deportation Nation because I kind of knew what was coming, but we tried to be a little bit in that space of just like, bad stuff is coming, and there is going to be some stuff of people fighting back, and we always want to highlight that. So, my newsletter goes out every Wednesday and Friday. You can check it out there. And I'm Carrasquillo on X, and I'm Real Adrian C on Instagram. So I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And look, go back and tell your friends that Deportation Nation was a hell of a great branding opportunity. They missed out. They need to switch the name up, because Deportation Nation is exactly what we've turned into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I got you.
Adrian Carrasquillo, thank you very much. Adrian, that's me one more time. One more piece of trauma before you go, to like you feel like your auntie or your mama calling you.
Thank you so much, Joy.
Thank you, my friend. Take care. I appreciate you. All right, Adrian Carrasquillo, you guys want to definitely follow him at the Bulwark, on Substack, on all the things. He's a really great journalist. And this is the thing. People will catch on eventually that the Trump administration may have said whatever they said during the election. And if you bought into it and you just weren't paying attention that much and you thought they were going to do something that's going to help you economically, surprise, surprise, they're not. They just don't like brown and black people. All right, before we get to our next topic, which is this government shutdown, I want you all to start thinking about in the chat. Let us know what you think in the chat. Do you believe that Democrats should stand aside and allow the government to shut down? That is the question for the chat. I'm throwing that question out to the chat, also to the folks on Substack. Also jump in that chat. If you're over there and you are a paid subscriber over at Substack, you can get in that chat and let us know. Do you think that Democrats should stand aside and allow the government to shut down? Should they help Republicans at all? Or should Democrats just stand back? I will note that as, who is this? Diggable Logic says in the chat, tourism to the United States is down sharply. I will tell you, just driving around DC during times, even in the late summer when it would normally be thick with tourists, it was very light. We were just in New York City. You can go and get yourself a seat at almost any restaurant right now because there's just, tourism is just down all over the country because people are afraid to come here. You saw what happened to those South Koreans who were working in Georgia, doing jobs, training Americans for high-paying jobs. They got harassed, sent there back in Korea. They don't want to come back. We have the World Cup coming up in the United States. We have the Olympics coming up in the United States while Trump is still president. Are people going to be comfortable? We've seen athletes rousted by ICE and these federalized police. They're going to be in freaking Portland, Oregon, harassing like all the, biker dudes, the guys who are like on their Schwinns and stuff, driving around playing hacky sack. They're going to start attacking them and looking for any brown ones. First of all, you're not going to find that many brown people. It's Portland, Oregon, but they're going to look for them. If you're brown in Portland right now, I would definitely walk with your passport and be very careful. But before we get to our next topic, I want to play you guys a couple of the news of the weird. I want to do a little news of the weird today because there is some weird stuff that's going on. And it's mainly, of course, Donald Trump doing it. Jason, can we serve up E1? This is E1. This is an AI, very weird thing that I want you to understand isn't real. If you see this online, I really want you to know that it isn't real. This is called med beds. Donald Trump is so desperate to get you off the Epstein files, to get his people to stop talking about the Epstein files, and to convince them that the $400 grocery bill they just paid isn't real, and that groceries really are cheaper, even though they're like double. I just did an Instacart the other day and was in shock when I saw how much it was, because normally that would have been like $125. It was like $300. Everything is double. Everything is double. And that's not just in New York City. I'm talking about anywhere you live. Everybody's grocery bill is high. He's trying to get people to forget it. And that, by the way, right now, coming up, if the current budget, if it stays the way it is now, there's an expiration date on your healthcare premium assistance that comes from the federal government. If you're on Medicaid, that is going to expire in about 30 days. And everyone's healthcare coverage expenses are going to go up by like 75%. And we're talking about soon, before the end of the year, right as we're going into the holidays. They're about to jack up your healthcare costs on top of your grocery costs, on top of your housing costs. All of it's going up under Trump, which is why he's actually starting to lose support even among Latinos who voted for him.
During the election when Elon Musk said everybody has to feel pain in the beginning because they're trying to say that.
He did. That you're absolutely right, Jason. Elon Musk did say it. He said everyone's going to have to feel some pain because we all have to get together and pay for that tax cut for the super rich. These people at the top 1%, about 400,000 families, got a permanent, enormous, historically huge tax cut. Their taxes were cut to the lowest level they've ever been.
Right now, they're not hearing anything you're saying.
Huh? What happened?
I said they're in the Caribbean right now.
Oh, no, they're all, wondering what happened. They didn't get their Epstein Island trip. And so they're trying to figure out some other place to go and do their nasty, dirty work. They do their nasty dirt because Epstein's dead. Epstein Island's no longer available for them to do a vacation. They're trying to find somewhere else to go. All of the billionaires who are all planning to hang out with Jeffrey Epstein, and then he died, so they couldn't do that. They're all now plotting to do total surveillance. And I want to, one more thing I want to note before I play this MedBeds thing. The thing that Mueller and Comey in their era of the FBI were investigating, the reason Mueller and Comey threatened to resign is that the Bush II administration, the George W. Bush administration, wanted to do total surveillance, not just of your phone, but of the internet, of everything that you did online. What are those AI billionaire freaks looking to do now? Peter Thiel is working on putting y'all under total surveillance on all your social media and all the internet. They're still working on that project, and they were all going to hang out with Epstein. You put 2 and 2 together yourselves. I'm not going to do it for you. Here is MedBeds. Take a listen.
Breaking now. President Donald J. Trump has announced a historic new healthcare system, the launch of America's first MedBed hospitals and a national MedBed card for every citizen.
Every American will soon receive their own MedBed card. With it, you'll have guaranteed access to our new hospitals led by the top doctors in the nation, equipped with the most advanced technology in the world. These facilities are safe, modern, and designed to restore every citizen to full health and strength. This is the beginning of a new era in American healthcare.
In this first phase, only a limited number of MedBed cards will be released. Registration details will be announced very soon.
That isn't real. So Donald Trump is so unsuccessful as president that he's having to invent pretend successful policies that are like AI generated fake healthcare, as if you won't notice that you're not getting real healthcare. He thinks that you will be able to be convinced and fooled into believing you got med beds. He's invented, Jason, a fake policy, a pretend policy that he doesn't really have, that isn't real, and that he thinks he can convince Americans really happened, because he's just going to tell you, don't worry that you're dying of sepsis because you couldn't get normal treatment because you're no longer able to afford to go to the doctor. Don't worry, you've got med beds.
How many of them you bet? Probably try to look that up on the internet.
Oh, I promise you, you're
Probably
going
about
to
10,000.
They're going to post it on their social medias. You're going to see these people post it on social.
Does the link go back to Trump?
They're going to pretend that they're real, and they're going to believe that they got health care and they're going to be dying of COVID and measles, mumps, and rubella. They're like, I'm on my med beds. He's trying to convince his supporters, who are, let's just be honest, they're about Hegseth Bright.
He didn't really make that ad, did he?
It's real. I promise you. That is on his social media. Med beds. This is the other thing I want to show you that he's doing. So, and by the way, you're not getting med beds. There's no med bed. Med beds aren't real, but his supporters are going to be convinced, wait, they're just going to be waiting on their med beds while their Medicaid is being cut and they're losing their health care and can't go to the doctor, because when this budget bill when this deal doesn't go through, and I believe the shutdown is tomorrow, if we have a shutdown, your health care costs are about to skyrocket. So don't worry, you're going to have med beds.
What happens in these med beds? Do they explain what happens? I mean, does it take you into another realm somewhere? Does it, solve all your problems?
Clearly, it takes you to another dimension, and you're being healed and treated for free in the other dimension. But in real life, your ass is going to die. But in that other dimension where it takes you, you're being treated for free. You do not have any bill. There's no health expenses. You don't have to present your insurance card. You just lay down in the med bed and you're healed. And they want you to basically, do you put on like you put the glass virtual, maybe you do like a VR. You get in like a virtual reality situation, and in your mind, you're being treated for free. But in real life, your ass is dying because you can't get health care because they took your Medicaid.
Let me be careful, because they might start body harvesting for Trump.
We don't know what they're going to do.
Save all his parts for him.
That's true.
Keep him alive.
Med beds might be a way to harvest your organs. Be careful. Let me tell you what the National Medical Association has warned is going to happen if there's no budget deal. And I want to be very clear from sources in the Congressional Black Caucus who I spoke with today. The Congressional Black Caucus and all of the caucuses are meeting today to strategize, to be of one accord and not break apart the way they did the last time when Schumer cut a deal with Trump in the end and allowed the budget to go through. Reportedly, Democrats are going to hold strong now. And the way that they're moving is they're saying the only way they will vote through a budget deal is if Medicaid is preserved, and if those premium supports that come from the federal government, if you have Medicaid, or AKA Obamacare, okay, Medicaid isn't just what poor folks have. A lot of people who are freelancers, who work in gig economy jobs, you have Medicaid. It's just called Obamacare. Obamacare is just plussed up Medicaid. They took Medicaid, which is the health program that is a block grant from the federal government that goes to each state that accepted it. And then instead of you having a cap of this much income in order to qualify for Medicaid, they raised the cap. That's all Obamacare is in terms of the states. They raise the cap so you can make a little more money and get Medicaid, and you get all these benefits with it. Free health screenings. You can get a screening from men. You can get free mammograms. You get all these benefits as if you have normal insurance, but it's Medicaid, right? That's what Obamacare is. Most states allowed and accepted it, and the federal government reimbursed the state 100% for the first 10 years. So it was basically free to the states, but most red states said, we don't want it. They refused to take it. That went all the way to the Supreme Court, and by a 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court said states can refuse to take Obamacare, but they can't end Obamacare federally. So that's where we stand. So you still have states like Texas and Florida that do not have Obamacare. Louisiana has it because they briefly elected a Democratic governor, John Bel Edwards. And then in that moment, when they had a Democratic governor, they got Obamacare. But if you are in an Obamacare state and you have Obamacare Medicaid, your cost is about to go way up. Let me tell you all the 5 things that will happen if Democrats don't get a deal. And they are saying no health care, no vote. You all might want to hashtag that. They're saying no health care, no vote. If they don't get the restoration of these premium supports, Democrats are saying, at least according to my sources, that they are going to vote en masse, vote all of them, 100%. If they can all hold together, they're going to vote no, or they're going to stand aside and tell Republicans that you pass the budget by your damn selves. We're not going to help you. That is what we are hearing. The Democrats are going to hold the line on no health care, no vote. And this is what they want. They want to get rid of these things that will change. Republicans want to add work requirements in order for you to get your Obamacare or any form of Medicaid. Now, the problem with that is most people who are on Medicaid already work. They work like 2 and 3 jobs in some cases. But in some cases, the people who are on Medicaid are disabled. They're disabled or they're a child. So you can't require a child or a disabled person who cannot work, but they're saying, doesn't matter, get in the fields. They've also talked about having Medicaid recipients work in the fields and replace the brown people they're deporting out of the country. So they want work requirements. They want dual eligible people who are poor and elderly, who have 2 reasons to be on Medicaid. They want to make them ineligible. So they're saying they want to take away some of the criteria that you normally can use to get on Medicaid. They want to get rid of them. They want to decrease the amount of coverage, meaning they want to take away your access to vision and dental. Those will go away. If the Republicans get their way, you're going to lose eye and dental. So they're going to take that away from the basic Obamacare plan. So those of you who have Obamacare or have Medicaid and you were able to go to an eye doctor or a dentist, they want to take that away.
That's like 2 screenings a year for your dental
Yes.
and eye checkup.
That's right. And dental care is very important for your health, right? So if you're having your teeth are rotting or things, I mean, this is insane. They want to take that away. They want to 6-month eligibility. They will drop people who are eligible. There's like a span of time in which you're able to have your eligibility. They want to reduce that. Rural hospitals that are currently getting funded, many of them will close. And they're going to reduce the safeguards for safety safety in hospitals, right? So basically rural hospitals, a lot of hospitals who don't operate at a profit because they operate in some rural area where if they don't have Medicaid reimbursing them, they actually can't afford to operate at all. So you're going to see a lot of those hospitals close. So what Democrats are saying, and again, Democrats aren't great at the messaging. They're not making it super succinct. I mean, they said, I received this and it's a little bit long-winded, but the bottom line of what they're saying is the support that the federal government has provided to individuals on Medicaid that allows you to be able to afford your health care. Those are going to go away if Republicans get their way. And what Democrats are saying, if you do not retain and extend the assistance that people on Medicaid and Obamacare receive so that they can afford health care, we ain't voting for it. So that's it. So you're either going to get the health care, at least that you have now, and keep it, or you're going to get med beds.
I hate to be a cynic, but how long do you think is till the Democrats correct?
Until Chuck Schumer folds. I mean, it's always the timer is always on Schumer. A lot of people get on Hakeem Jeffries, but one thing Hakeem Jeffries does better than Schumer does is he does hold his caucus together. Generally, he may have 1 or 2 defections, but generally Hakeem Jeffries, he's not great on everything. I do not like that he signed that Charlie Kirk honoring Charlie Kirk bullshit. I think that was terrible. I don't know why he did that. I'm not sure why he's so weird on Mamdani. I don't understand that. I don't know why he just doesn't endorse the man. He's from New York. He's one's from Brooklyn, one's from Queens. Is that Brooklyn, Queens thing? What's happening? But on this, he's generally pretty good. Like, he's pretty good at holding his caucus together. I don't know that Schumer will do the same, because last time Schumer went around the Democrats in the House and basically threw them under the bus and cut a deal with Trump. So I just assume at some point, because Democrats' thing is they don't want the government to shut down. Whereas I'm looking in the chat, and right now it's 92% of the people in the chat are saying shut it down. 92% of the people in the chat, in the YouTube chat, are saying shut it down. I haven't checked Substack yet. Maybe Sean can check Substack. But I'm telling you right now that in the YouTube chat, it's 92-8.
And the funny thing about it, if they do let it go through, Trump's going to cave in about 12 hours. And then Democrats will get everything that they want. They need to start playing hardball. Period.
And if they shut the government down, Donald Trump is threatening mass layoffs. He's saying each agency needs to prepare for mass layoffs if the government shuts down.
It's a bluff.
But what I'm saying is, then do it, Donald Trump. First of all, they did mass layoffs already with Doge. They've already done mass layoff. That's already happened, right? Donald Trump is mass laying off. 300,000 Black women have no jobs right now because they already did mass layoffs. They're laying people off in the GAO. Now they're begging them to come back. They laid the people off in the one that administers our nuclear weapons, and they're begging them to come back. They laid off all these people and didn't hire enough people for air traffic control. Now we can barely get a plane off the ground. So I'm like, I would call this bluff. I would say, go ahead, lay them people off, because you know who laid them off? You motherfucking you. If Donald Trump lays off a mass number of people, then he did that, just like Doge did it. And he hates the fact that they're getting blamed for it, but they are the ones to blame. Democrats have no power. Let me play one more thing. This is E2, because here's the other piece. Donald Trump, while threatening mass layoffs, while putting med beds out instead of giving people health care, while putting military into the streets of places like Portland that are totally safe, wasting money we supposedly don't have, but spending lavishly, promising $50,000 signing bonuses for Proud Boys who become ICE.
Back from around the world with Hegseth.
Flying every single military general, hundreds and hundreds of generals from all over the world, forcing them to come back to listen to a 20-minute speech by the Unterfuhrer, forcing them, I guess, to pledge personal loyalty to Trump, wasting our money. So they're blowing money at this point on all of this other stuff, but they're saying there's not enough money, and blowing money on ICE, picking up, dishwashers and construction workers, and then eventually having to release them anyway. And then in some cases losing them, grabbing children and deporting them, or deporting the parents and leaving the kids here by themselves. Now they have to pay to figure out what to do with the kids. They're blowing money when they say we don't have any money. But let me show you what Trump is doing with his time. This is E2. This is Donald Trump's. Donald Trump wants you to know that, baby, your ass may be broke, but like a pimp in the pulpit. Like a pimp in the pulpit, Donald Trump said, hey, baby, y'all bitches is broke. I got gold, 24 karat gold in the Oval Office, in the cabinet room of the White House. Foreign leaders and everyone else freak out when they see the quality and beauty. Best Oval Office ever in terms of success. And look, President DJT, he said, y'all broke, I got gold. He's like a pimp in the pulpit. Donald Trump wants you to know that you may not be able to afford health care. You may be losing your dental and eye coverage. You are paying double for groceries and can't afford your rent or your mortgage. You may have lost your house. You may have been laid off by the federal government and doged. Your life may be terrible. But Kid Jason, can you put it up again? He said, bitches, I'm rich. I'm rich, bitch. He said, y'all got nothing. But like a pimp in the pulpit, I got gold. I got gold.
Some of the highest quality.
Highest quality gold. 14 karat, 24, not even 24 karat gold.
Foreign leaders are going to freak out.
The foreign leaders are freaking out because he's got so much gold. So Donald Trump is laughing at you. He's laughing at each and every one of you, especially his voters and supporters, because he's taking your farms. His tariffs are ruining your businesses. He's making you poor, but he's letting you know that he's fine. He's fine. Thank you for the $10. Look, I got $10 from James Humphrey. So take that, Donald Trump. Thank you, James Humphrey. We appreciate you. Team TJRS, always so generous, putting some coins in the till. Jason, we got to figure out, we got to throw a little something for the team. With all of this, all these little coins that we're getting from our friends from Team TJRS, we're gonna do something nice for the team. Lastly, before I let you guys go, I have two things that I want to play for you. The first one is a message that Joe Biden, I had a lot of criticisms of Joe Biden, but this ties up the things that we've been talking about and the thing that we really need to worry about. Joe Biden nailed it in his final address to the nation. Joe Biden, everyone.
That's why my farewell address tonight, I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. And this is a dangerous and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before, more than a century ago. But the American people stood up to the robber barons back then and busted the trusts. They didn't punish the wealthy. They just made the wealthy play by the rules everybody else had to.
And that warning has come to fruition. We have billionaires who were making plans to go to Epstein Island, who are currently making plans to build AI systems that will surveil your every move on social media, on your on the computer, your phone.
Cameras that study body motion
everywhere. Cameras that surveil you. And these oligarchs are about to buy TikTok. Larry Ellison is already in the works of taking over TikTok. They're going to take over every one of the social media outlets. They're going to make them all MAGA. They're taking over all of the mainstream media so that you won't be able to get anything but right-wing news from CBS, ABC, NBC. They're pressuring The View, saying they don't want to hear any anti-Trumpism there. They're pressuring Saturday Night Live. They're pressuring Late Night. They're pressuring everyone. Donald Trump wants this to be North Korea. And he's going to hand this country over to a small number of billionaires who got a permanent tax cut. While Trump gets crypto billions, they're laughing at all the rest of us while we're scrambling and trying to avoid ICE and avoid being tackled by ICE Gestapo, mask-wearing thugs who are in the streets. We don't even know if they're really ICE, really law enforcement. They could be Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, Boogaloo Boys, 3%ers. We have no idea who they are. But they want us to live in fear while they live like kings. They're reconstructing in America the way it was in the beginning when a group of oligarchs ran this country. They don't believe in democracy. They don't want you to vote. They don't believe you should have the right to vote. They don't believe women should have any rights. They think women are just breed mules who should just pump out more workers that they can impoverish and enslave. They believe in slavery. And we laugh about it, but it's real. This is what's happening. But I want to end because we do love a moment of joy. Because not everybody is laying down for the bullshit. Jason, can we prepare our moment of joy? Because this to me is how you fight these sons of bitches. Let's play it. This was in the great city of Chicago, Illinois. The thugs tried to get this delivery man. And he said, nope, not today. Not today. Not today. Not today, bitches. Not today. He said, nope. Who's zooming who? He said, bye, bitches. And that is your moment of joy. Not today. Help, scoop, scooty, scoop. He said, scoop, scoop, scoop. Scooby the scoop. Scooby the doop, doop. Bip, bip, bip. Delivery man. Out. Delivery man. Out. Not today, bitches. And that's your moment of joy. Please be sure to hit like and subscribe. Please make sure that you also hit that share button. If you do the little bell looking thing, you get notified whenever we're live. Y'all, we love you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Joy Reid Show. See you on the next Joy Reid Show Wednesday night, same that time. Same that time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye, y'all.
Hey, it's the B to the A, the S, the I, C's like, okay. I'ma talk less, listen more. Tell me what they hitting for. Out the gate 6 and 4, yeah, I'm about to lick them. Shake